you think hobos just ate beans from a can? These traveling men riding the rails created some of the most resourceful meals in American history. From the 1890s through the 1940s, hobos developed an entire cuisine based on what they could forage, beg, or cook over an open fire. These weren't just survival meals. They were clever combinations that turned scraps into sustenance and nothing into something worth eating. Let's explore 25 authentic hobo meals that fed men traveling across Depression-era America. Number 1. Mulligan Stew. Mulligan Stew was the king of hobo meals. Whatever anyone contributed went into the communal pot. A potato from one man, an onion from another, a can of tomatoes someone begged from a housewife, bones from the butcher's trash. The pot simmered for hours over the jungle fire while men swapped stories. The long cooking time broke down tough vegetables and extracted every bit of flavor from those bones. The broth turned rich and brown, thickened by dissolved starches from the potatoes. Each bowl was different depending on what got added that day. Sometimes it had chunks of meat, sometimes just vegetables and beans. The beauty was in the democracy. Everyone contributed what they could. Everyone ate equally. The stew tasted like cooperation, with layers of flavor from a dozen different sources. Hot, filling, and stretched far enough to feed 20 men from ingredients that would have made one small meal. Number 2. Stone soup. Stone soup started as a con, but became real sustenance. A hobo would show up at a farmhouse with nothing but a clean stone. He'd ask for just a pot of water, claiming he could make soup from the stone. As it cooked, he'd mention it would be better with an onion, prompting the farmer's wife to donate one. Then maybe a potato would help. Soon carrots appeared, then a ham bone. The stone never added flavor. It was theater. But the resulting soup was genuine. The vegetables released their sweetness into the broth. The ham bone contributed smoke and salt. After an hour of simmering, the soup was hearty and satisfying. The hobo would remove his stone, ceremoniously clean it, and move on with a full belly. The soup tasted like vegetables at their simplest. Pure, clean flavors in a light broth that warmed you from the inside. Number 3. Hobo Dinner in a can. A tin can became a personal cooking vessel. Punch holes in the sides for ventilation, pack it with potatoes, carrots, onions, and any meat scraps, then nestle it in hot coals. The can acted like a tiny oven, steaming the contents, while the coals provided steady heat. After 30 minutes, the vegetables were tender, having steamed in their own juices. The meat, if any, flavored everything. The can's metal conducted heat evenly, cooking the food thoroughly, without burning. When you pulled it from the coals, the vegetables were soft and sweet, the meat tender. Everything tasted slightly smoky from the fire, with that concentrated flavor that comes from food cooked in its own juices. You'd eat straight from the can with a whittled stick, the food still steaming hot. Each bite was simple but satisfying, pure ingredients cooked perfectly. Number 4. Dandelion Salad. Dandelions grew everywhere hobos traveled. Railroad rights-of-way, abandoned lots, field edges. In early spring, the young leaves were tender and only slightly bitter. Hobos would gather handfuls of the youngest, most tender leaves. Eating them raw provided fresh greens after winter. The leaves had a bitter bite that woke up your mouth with a slight peppery finish. Some men would wilt them with hot bacon grease from breakfast, turning them tender and coating them with fat. Others mixed them with wild onions or ramps. The bitterness was actually satisfying after weeks of beans and bread, cutting through the heavy, starchy foods. Dandelion salad provided vitamins that prevented scurvy, though hobos just knew it made them feel better. The leaves were free, abundant, and recognizable even to city men who'd never foraged before. Number 5. Fried mush. Cornmeal mush started as hot porridge, cooked with water and salt until thick. Pour it into a can or pan and let it cool overnight. By morning, it set up solid enough to slice. Those slices went into a hot pan with a little grease, bacon fat if you were lucky, butter if someone donated it. The mush fried up with a crispy golden crust while staying soft and creamy inside. Each slice had two distinct textures, crunchy exterior and tender, slightly sweet interior. The frying caramelized the natural sugars in the cornmeal. Plain mush tasted like corn and salt. Fried mush tasted like the best pancake you never knew you needed. Some men topped it with syrup if they could get it. Most ate it plain, savoring that crispy, creamy contrast. It stuck to your ribs, providing energy for a day of traveling. Number 6. Railroad Spike Stew. The myth said you cooked stew with a railroad spike for iron. The reality was darker. Men suffering from malnutrition would actually add rusty nails or spikes to their food, hoping the iron would help their blood. Rust is iron oxide, and desperate men figured some was better than none. The actual stew was standard fare, vegetables, maybe some meat, water, salt. Whether the spike added any bioavailable iron is doubtful. But the stew itself was nourishing. Long simmered bones released their minerals. Vegetables contributed vitamins. The broth was rich and warming. Men claimed they felt stronger after eating spike stew, probably from the actual food rather than the iron. The stew tasted like any other campfire stew. Earthy vegetables, smoky undertones from the fire, whatever meat flavored the broth. The spike was superstition and desperation mixed together. Number 7. Potato peel chips. When housewives gave hobos potatoes, smart men saved the peels. Those thick peels went directly onto hot coals, roasting until crispy. The skin would char slightly, turning dark and crispy, while the bit of potato attached stayed tender. They tasted smoky and slightly burnt in the best way, with that potato skin flavor concentrated and intensified. Salt, if you had it, made them perfect. The peels were crunchy, satisfying to chew, and felt like a snack rather than survival food. The slight bitterness from the char balanced the potato's natural sweetness. Some men would save peels for days, drying them, then frying them later in whatever grease became available. Those fried peels were even better, golden, crispy, like the best potato chip from the fanciest restaurant, except free. Number 8. Bread pudding in a can. Stale bread was currency in hobo jungles. Broken up in a can with condensed milk and a little water, it transformed into something almost elegant. The mixture sat for an hour, letting the bread absorb the sweetened milk. Then, the can went into hot coals, or was suspended over steam from boiling water. As it heated, the bread softened completely. The milk formed a custard, and everything melded together. The result was sweet, soft, and comforting, like the bread pudding from someone's grandmother, but made in a tin can over a fire. The condensed milk provided intense sweetness and richness. The bread gave it substance. Each spoonful was creamy, sweet, with little pockets where the bread had absorbed more milk. This was poverty food that tasted like dessert, turning trash into treasure through patience and heat. Number 9. Vinegar pie without the pie. True vinegar pie needed a crust, but hobos adapted the filling into a standalone pudding. Sugar, water, butter if available, vinegar and flour mixed together and cooked in a tin cup until thick. The vinegar's acidity cut through the sweetness, creating a bright, tangy flavor that tasted almost like lemon. The mixture thickened into a smooth custard consistency as the flour cooked. Hot from the fire, it was sweet and sour simultaneously, coating your mouth with flavor. The butter added richness that mellowed the vinegar's sharpness. Eating it with hardtack or stale bread, you could almost believe it was actual lemon curd. The taste was complex, sweet, tart, buttery, with that bright acidity that made your mouth water. This was sugar and vinegar creating something that transcended both ingredients. Number 10. Wild onion soup. Wild onions grew along railroad tracks and in vacant lots. Hobos recognized their grassy tops and dug up the small bulbs. Boiled in water with salt, they created a surprisingly flavorful broth. The onions released their sweetness during the long simmer, turning mild and tender. The soup was clear and light, with that distinctive onion flavor that was sharp but not overwhelming. The bulbs were small but intensely flavored, tasting like the best French onion soup without the cheese or bread. Some men would add cattail roots or other foraged vegetables. The basic onion soup was restorative, warming, with enough flavor to make you forget you were eating weeds. The onion's natural sweetness concentrated in the broth, creating layers of flavor from one simple ingredient. Number 11. Coffee can bread. A coffee can became a bread pan. Simple dough, flour, water, salt, maybe a little sugar, rose in the can covered with cloth. Once doubled, the covered can went into hot coals. The metal conducted heat evenly, baking the bread all around. After 40 minutes, you'd have a cylindrical loaf. The crust was thick and hard, almost like a shell, protecting the soft interior. Breaking through that crust revealed bread that was tender, slightly sweet, with that fresh baked smell. The bread tasted simple but perfect, pure wheat flavor, slightly yeasty with a chewy crumb. Sliced thick, it was substantial enough to fill you up. Toasted over the fire, it became crispy and even better. This was bread in its most basic form, proving you didn't need fancy ovens to make something that tasted like civilization. Number 12. Bacon grease gravy. Saved bacon grease was liquid gold. Mixed with a little flour and water, it became gravy that could make sawdust taste good. The grease melted in a hot can. The flour got stirred in until it browned. Then water joined slowly, whisking constantly. The mixture thickened into proper gravy, smooth, rich, with that smoky bacon flavor throughout. Poured over bread, potatoes, or just eaten straight, this gravy delivered fat and flavor when both were scarce. It tasted like breakfast, like the memory of bacon, coating everything it touched with richness. The flour thickened it just enough to cling without being gummy. Each spoonful was pure comfort, salty, smoky, fatty in the best way. Men would save bacon grease for weeks, hoarding it like treasure, knowing it could turn any meal into something special. Number 13. Cattail root stew. Cattails grew in every swamp and wetland. Their roots were starchy and filling, tasting like mild potatoes with a slightly sweet finish. Hobos would wade into water, pull up the roots, and peel away the tough outer layer. The inner root was white and crisp. Boiled until tender, cattail roots became the base for stew. They absorbed flavors from whatever else went into the pot: onions, salt, bits of meat. The texture was between potato and water chestnut, with a slight crunch even when fully cooked. The flavor was subtle and starchy, letting other ingredients shine while providing substance. A pot of cattail stew could feed several men, the roots filling everyone up. It tasted clean and fresh, like vegetables that grew in clear water with none of the swampy flavor you might expect. Number 14. Soda cracker stew. When food was impossibly scarce, hobos made stew from crackers. Saltines broken into hot water created a thick, pasty mixture that was technically food. The crackers dissolved into a porridge-like consistency, the salt providing the only flavor. Sometimes men would add black pepper or any available fat to make it more palatable. The taste was bland, wheat, salt, and not much else, but it was hot, filling, and prevented complete starvation. The cracker's fat content provided some calories. The hot water warmed from inside. This wasn't food you enjoyed. This was food that kept you alive. Each spoonful was thick and gummy, coating your mouth and stomach, making you feel full even though nutrition was minimal. Men ate this when nothing else existed, grateful for even this minimal sustenance. Number 15. Fish head. Soup. Fish markets would give away heads and bones. Hobos knew these scraps made incredible soup. The heads went into boiling water with salt and whatever vegetables were available. Long simmering extracted gelatin from the bones, oils from the fish, creating a rich, cloudy broth. The heads contributed meat from the cheeks and collar. The best parts, actually. The soup was intensely fishy in a good way, with that deep, oceanic flavor. The gelatin gave it body, coating your mouth. Strained and served clear, or eaten with all the bits and pieces, the soup was nourishing and flavorful. It tasted like the sea, concentrated and rich. The meat from the heads was tender and sweet, hidden in unlikely places. This was waste transformed into wealth, scraps becoming supper. Number 16. Roasted root vegetables. Hobos became experts at identifying edible roots. Burdock, wild carrots, Jerusalem artichokes, all could be dug up and roasted directly in coals. The roots' skins would char and blacken, protecting the interior. After 20 minutes, you'd pull them from the fire, brush off the ash, and peel away the burnt skin. Inside was tender, sweet, roasted vegetable. Each root had its own flavor. Burdock was earthy and slightly bitter. Wild carrots were sweet and carroty. Jerusalem artichokes were nutty and complex. The roasting concentrated their natural sugars, creating caramelized flavors. No seasoning was needed. The fire and the vegetables' natural sweetness was enough. Eating them hot from the coals, your hands would get dirty, but the taste was pure and satisfying. Number 17. Cornmeal, Johnny cakes. Johnny cakes cooked directly on hot stones near the fire. Cornmeal mixed with water and salt into a thin batter, poured onto the heated rock, spread thin with a stick. The cakes cooked fast, developing crispy edges and a slightly chewy center. When golden brown, they'd peel off the stone like primitive pancakes. The taste was pure corn, sweet, slightly gritty, with that toasted flavor from the hot stone. Some men added a little sugar or molasses if available. Most ate them plain, savoring the simple corn flavor enhanced by fire. They were crispy when hot, chewy when cool, and always filling. The stone's heat created texture you couldn't get in a pan. These cakes were ancient food, cooked the simplest way possible, tasting like corn and smoke and survival. Number 18. Beanhole beans. Beanhole beans required planning, but delivered incredible results. Dig a hole, fill it with hot coals, nestle your pot of beans in the coals, cover with dirt. Let them cook overnight. By morning, the beans were tender, creamy, with concentrated flavor from the long, slow cooking. The sealed hole created an oven effect, maintaining steady heat for hours. The beans broke down into a thick, rich mixture. Any meat added had flavored everything. The result was beans that were smoky, deeply flavorful, almost sweet from the caramelized sugars. The long cooking made them digestible and delicious. Each spoonful was creamy and rich, coating your mouth. This was bean perfection, requiring nothing but time, fire, and patience. Number 19. Dried apple slices. Orchards often had fallen or damaged apples. Hobos would slice them thin and dry them in the sun or near the fire. Once dried, the apples would keep for weeks, providing portable sweetness. The drying concentrated their flavor into intense apple essence. Chewed slowly, they rehydrated with saliva, releasing that tart-sweet flavor. The texture was leathery and chewy, requiring work that made them satisfying. Some men would rehydrate them in hot water, making instant applesauce. Others preferred eating them dry, savoring each piece for 10 minutes. They tasted like autumn and orchards and better times, providing quick energy when hiking to the next town. The natural sugars gave a boost. The chewing motion was meditative, something to do with your mouth besides talk. Number 20. Salt pork and potatoes. Salt pork was cheap and kept without refrigeration. A small piece could flavor an entire meal. Sliced thin and fried, it rendered fat for cooking while the meat turned crispy. Potatoes went into that fat, frying until golden. The salt pork's intense saltiness seasoned everything, requiring no additional salt. The rendered fat gave the potatoes incredible richness. The pork itself was intensely salty and fatty, meant to be eaten in small pieces with lots of potato. Together, they created a complete meal: fat, salt, starch, and that smoky pork flavor. The potatoes absorbed the pork fat, turning golden and crispy on the outside, tender inside. This was simple food elevated by good technique. Each bite delivered pure satisfaction: crispy potato, salty meat, all the richness you needed. Number 21. Acorn Mush. Acorns required work, but provided food when nothing else existed. The nuts had to be shelled, then soaked in multiple changes of water to remove bitter tannins. This took days. Once properly leached, the acorns could be ground into flour and cooked into mush. The resulting porridge tasted nutty and slightly sweet, like a more interesting oatmeal. The texture was smooth and creamy, coating your mouth. Acorn mush was filling and surprisingly flavorful, with that distinctive nutty taste that reminded you of what squirrels already knew. Acorns were good food if you knew how to prepare them. Some men would sweeten it with stolen sugar or molasses. Most ate it plain, appreciating the work that went into making something edible from tree nuts. Number 22. Tomato soup from ketchup. Restaurant ketchup packets became soup ingredients. Several packets squeezed into hot water, stirred vigorously, created something approximating tomato soup. The ketchup dissolved into the water, turning it red and slightly sweet. The vinegar in the ketchup added tang. Sugar provided sweetness. Salt gave it flavor. Was it real soup? No. Did it taste like warm tomato-flavored liquid that filled your stomach? Yes. Some men would add crackers, turning it into something more substantial. The taste was ketchup-forward, obviously, but hot and slightly comforting. It reminded you of real soup even while falling short. This was making something from nothing, turning condiments into courses. The warmth was as important as the flavor, something hot in your belly when everything else was cold. Number 23. Wild mushroom. Scramble. Hobos learned which mushrooms were safe: morels, puffballs, chicken of the woods. Found in forests along the rails, these mushrooms fried up in any available fat. If eggs could be begged from a farm, the combination was luxury. The mushrooms turned golden and slightly crispy, their earthy flavor intensified by frying. Scrambled eggs mixed in created a protein-rich meal. The mushrooms were meaty and substantial, tasting like the forest itself. Each bite was earthy and rich, the eggs providing creaminess while the mushrooms added depth. This was a meal that felt sophisticated despite being cooked in a tin can over a campfire. The wild mushrooms had flavors. Cultivated varieties couldn't match. Complex, earthy, slightly funky in the best way. Number 24. Hardtack pudding. Hardtack was military surplus, cheaper than dirt and nearly as appetizing. But soaked overnight in water or milk if available, then cooked with sugar, it transformed. The crackers dissolved into a thick porridge-like pudding. The long cooking broke down the hardtack's rock-like texture into something smooth. Added sugar made it sweet. Any milk made it creamy. The result was filling and surprisingly pleasant. Smooth, sweet, with that wheat flavor hiding underneath. It tasted like the world's simplest pudding, like someone made dessert from cardboard and somehow succeeded. The texture was gummy and thick, coating your mouth and stomach. This was desperation cooking that somehow worked, turning the least appetizing ingredient into something you could eat without suffering. Number 25. Coffee can cake. The ultimate hobo luxury was cake baked in a coffee can. Flour, sugar, baking powder if available, water or milk, mixed into batter and poured into a greased can. The covered can went into coals, buried slightly for even heat. After an hour, you'd have actual cake. The texture was dense but tender, slightly sweet, with that fresh-baked smell. The can gave it a cylindrical shape that sliced into perfect rounds. The crust was darker and chewier, protecting the soft interior. This was cake that tasted like civilization, like someone's kitchen, like normal life. Sweet, simple, and incredibly satisfying. Men would save ingredients for weeks to make cake, treating it as celebration food. The taste was pure wheat and sugar, elevated by being cooked over fire, made special by being shared among men who had nothing else. From Mulligan Stew to coffee can cake, these 25 hobo meals prove that necessity truly is the mother of invention. These traveling men created an entire cuisine from scraps, foraged ingredients, and pure ingenuity. They turned potato peels into chips, dandelions into salad, and absolutely nothing into something worth eating. These weren't just survival techniques, they were acts of creativity that kept men fed while crisscrossing Depression-era America. The next time you think you can't make a meal from what's in your pantry, remember, hobos made feasts from less. Like the video if it surprised you. Share it with someone who loves clever old-school ingenuity, and subscribe for more forgotten stories and creative survival.